I think Ben Allen's son, Ed Allen, is going to be one of the most discussed players, Kane, over the years, particularly if he starts to get a gallop on. He's 6'5" in the old. He can run like the wind. He can kick the ball well. He had a bit of a back injury, so he clearly wasn't on the Swans' radar. They overlooked him. Hawthorn overlooked him. They're pretty happy with what they got to Hawthorn, though, I've got to say, Alan. So I don't think it was a mistake by Hawthorn. I don't know the kids. I haven't seen them. Each and every one of their highlights package look great, but I reckon when you've got a guy who's as big as Paddy Cripps, can run faster than Paddy Cripps, and kicks the ball pretty well, you run the risk of, I guess, overlooking a really sensational product. And it wasn't just Sydney who overlooked him. Everybody else overlooked him as well. So he'll be one that will be of great interest. And it was interesting that Collingwood jumped all over him.
Yeah, let's ask our next guest about him because he had him 13 in his mock draft. Twomey is his name. Good evening to you, mate. Thanks for your time again.
No dramas, Kane and Gerard. Yeah, he was an interesting one, Ed Allen, across the night. He did have some interest from West Coast, from Melbourne, in that middle part of the first round. Got a little bit deeper, as you say, Gerard, to the Pies pick. And I think they were genuinely excited and also surprised that he was able to get to that part of the draft. But it is a little bit more on projection with Ed Allen, and this is the question for recruiters to make up in their own minds all the time. The projection of what he could be versus the production of maybe the other players around him. So that's weighed up, and a few went ahead of him, obviously.
You had him at 13, so what do you see in him that half a dozen clubs didn't?
Well, I think I ranked him around that part of the draft, mainly because of the scope that we see in him. And he's a runner. I think he's going to be able to play that Mark Blitzarves type of midfield role, potentially when Blitzarves plays the midfield, but he might be able to turn into a key back like Blitzarves as well and dominate through there. So I like that potential that we've seen from him. Again, only 6 or 7 games this year, though, after a back injury. Clearly really good bloodlines as well, which you have to factor in, and he's still sort of got some growth left in him, I think, in terms of his body development and filling out. But, yeah, I'm a fan.
You nailed the first 11, so unsurprising, really. It'd be unusual for you to get 11 in a row, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we round up to 12 or 13, Kane, when you're throwing a bid, and then the next one as well with Jefferson going to Melbourne. So we're happy with that. It's getting harder to predict in some ways, of course, with live trading coming in. But I think what showed last night was that there is and was being the top echelon of this year's draft that we've spoken a lot about on the show with you, Gerard, over the past month or so, as really separating themselves from the next pack and before they moved into sort of the phase 2 of the first round. So that wasn't a big surprise. But the main part, I think, after obviously Bailey Humphrey goes to the Suns and the Bombers make their choice at the pick 5 for Elijah Sardis. The main part after that was the Elijah Hewitt pick for the Eagles. They were weighing up Matthew Jefferson, the key forward at Melbourne. And I think if they had gone Jefferson with that pick, we would have seen a bit of a different sort of tinge to what happened after that.
Jasper Fletcher was bid on perhaps a little bit earlier than you thought from the Western Bulldogs. Of course, the Brisbane Lions would have matched that. Were you surprised the bid came that early?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. I mean, there's obviously a little bit of history between those two clubs more recently in terms of the Josh Dunkley deal. And the Swans, of course, made some bids too on Harry Ralston, the Giants Academy player, and then the Adelaide father-son player, Max Michelini. So 3 bids after that, 4 bids in total in that first round when you include Will Ashcroft at number 2. So, yeah, Fletcher for me was maybe a couple of spots more than I predicted, but he's right in that top group as well because of his quality and class. He's obviously the son of Adrian Fletcher, so a pretty good night for the Lions to get those 2 boys through the door.
We're going to talk to Charlie Gardner, head of the footy department up in Sydney, about their strategy. How did you read their strategy?
It was interesting. There's no doubt about that. I think.
Do you think there was animosity or paybacks? Because, I mean, ultimately, you can't put a bid in if you're not prepared to take the player, surely.
No, that's right. And the local midfielder in going to the Giants, they would have had a local factor as well that in terms of Harry Ralston, a local factor that could have attracted them to pick him as well and keep him if they wanted to. Max Michelini, they've had interest in all the way through this year. And to be honest, I see him as a bit of a Dane Rampy style of defender, and maybe they do as well and see that as a bit of a need. So the interesting part I thought after that, though, was you made 2 bids and then you do the trade. They obviously had some opportunities there and some interest within that top 20 for that pick. And the Hawthorn play for that was a good move from the Hawks too, I think, to manage to, this time around in the draft, get 2 first-round
Yep.
picks and get up and get your man and go hard at the rebuild.
He's a bit of a guru himself. Matty Rendell is his name. Bundy, thanks for your time again.
Thanks, Kane. Ratings must have been really good last night for you to
We're
bring me
doubling
back
up to
again.
just to test whether it wasn't just a one-off.
A one-off.
What'd you make of it all?
Oh, look, it was exciting, wasn't it? I mean, for us, it was fantastic. You know, those kids coming through. Where we under the pump, we were trying to see the picks were in.
Yeah.
We had kids lined up to interview, and they all came over for an interview, which I don't know if that's club orchestrated or AFL orchestrated, but it was fantastic. We had to pre-record some while picks were coming in, and then there's a trade, and we're trying to read the trade. It was that far away we couldn't even see what it was, but it involved the Swan stuff and Hawks, but we couldn't quite pick it up. But it was exciting, and bang, it ended. We still had 3 picks to go when we had to go off air for the soccer.
What was your assessment of the Swans? Because they are the most intriguing of the first rounders. They had the first round pick, and they elected not to use it under 20. They've gone for a small forward when there was a big, tall beast of a unit available through the middle of the ground, and they were very keen, it seems, to bolster next year's hand.
Well, they must have something next year in I haven't heard, but they must have something in their academy next year that's going to go reasonably high, sounds like. But a lot of the clubs try to get into next year. They rate the draft that highly. I haven't seen a rating of a draft that highly ever than people are saying about next year. So I haven't seen any of them play, but I certainly will.
Well, that may be the
next
simple case. They're just accumulating picks so they can push up or push into the first round next year.
No, but it was well known they were trying to trade out 14 and 17 for the last 4 weeks.
Right.
They were looking for a deal to trade out of those 2 picks. And, they managed to trade back on one of them.
Yep.
And they nominated the 2. Now, Michael Annie ended up going 17, but nearly every club had Michael Annie between 15 and 20, so that was fair. Harry Ralston, I don't know, so I can't tell you. It sounds like it might have been a little bit high to me. But,
the Swans are pretty keen on him, from what I understand.
But he is a local, which is really important.
Yep.
If they reneged on it, GWS, they got a bloke who's a local, and this is happening more and more, Gerard, isn't it?
Yep.
Interstate clubs are trying to stay local.
Yep.
So they don't have to worry
Neutralise
about the
the
go-home factor and have to put up with that pressure of 10 Melbourne clubs
Yep.
all clamouring for one particular player.
Yes.
Great for the players, bad for the clubs that they're at.
The injury aspect looms large most drafts, doesn't it, Matty? As a recruiter, how do you factor that in? Wardlaw is the obvious one. I think there'll be some players tonight that are in a similar boat. Braden George might be one of those who had an ACL this year but was considered a top talent by some. How do you factor all that in and the risk associated with it?
Look, it's really important, Kane. I can tell you a couple of incidents. We interviewed Bo Muster, I think, if you remember him. Went to Hawthorn. We interviewed him, and he had a knee reco in that year, and he showed us the knee reco, and I said to him, mate, there's something drastically wrong with this. I said, I'm no doctor, but this isn't right. It doesn't look right to me. It was all wonky.
Right.
Anyway, so we did the interview with the kid and all that. We really liked him as a player. And I said, boys, we can't take it. He needs another reco, I reckon. And the people who were with me agreed. Hawthorn picked him at 24 or something like that. Well, guess what happened? He went in for another reco.
Yep.
I was staggered. And this was in an area where that the AFL didn't put a lot of time into it. So as recruiters, we're trying to get every player heart tested at the time too. So
that happens now, doesn't it?
I'm not sure that it does, Kate.
I think you'll find that
it does happen now
because Jaden Stevenson was picked up.
No, this was a different issue because he had a specific heart issue, and all the clubs requested that he get that done. Not everyone get it done. So we did a power of work, Collingwood at the time. We got 3 different assessments of different people, the AFL included, who gave it the all clear. Every doctor at every club wrote him off, put a line through him, Stevenson, except we did more work than most.
Yep. And
we got 3 big ticks. So that's why we were happy to take Stevenson at the time. And off the top of my head, there was another player we were worried about injury front, and we let go too. We were keen on. So it is a big issue, and they do a test with the AFL doctors and clubs ask the players, can you check this bloke, can you check about this and check about that, it's reasonably thorough, but they won't let clubs do their own. With justification, because you could have 18 clubs doing one player, and it's not fair on the kids doing their exams.
Has worked in reverse, of course. Joel Selwood was the classic who was let go through to, I think he was pick 8 because he had a few problems with his knee.
There was only about 2 or 3 clubs who actually gave him the tick. I think Swans would have taken him as well, and Geelong, but every other club virtually wrote off Joel Selwood as well with his knee.
Yes.
Look at that.
I think everyone's looked at it for a long, long time for the first year.
But it is important. Hamstrings less important, obviously. Knees and obviously heart issues are really important. But so the hamstring one, we asked him, Wardlaw, he's back training and he's flying, as everyone is this time of the year. But so hopefully he's okay and it's not it doesn't bob up again.
So I really liked what Hawthorn did. Now, once again, until you see these players play in 5 years' time, we won't know. But they're a rebuilding club who need first-round draft picks. So they go from having 1 and Cam McKenzie at 70s. He looked a good size, didn't he, Matty, when we spoke to him last night?
Wasn't he a big boy? I was shocked.
So did the other kid, Preble, was it? Weddle.
Yeah. So
his highlights package looks sensational.
Yeah, and we spoke to Sardis earlier on in our program, and he said the athleticism of Weddle, he's the player outside the top 10. Gerard asked that could be one of the bargains of the draft. And then Hawthorn lose a future second and third, but it doesn't really matter because you think they're going to finish down the bottom anyway and have access to first round picks. So just take us through that strategy. Did you like it?
No, I did like it, and we assumed that they were going to try and push up. So they've done that smart play when you're in the rebuild. Kane, we've seen North do it, we've seen Adelaide do it in the last few years. Clubs part do it over the last few years, not a full one like North and Crows. And look, when you go back to rock bottom, you've made a lot of blues usually, self-inflicted in it, Gerard, most of it. Well, you just got to take your medicine, and that's what those 2 clubs have done. Hawthorn's it's a bit of a different rebuild because they've actually got some really good young players already. Yep. But they've cleaned out the top half. I think their oldest player might be 27 on their list.
It leaves them exposed in the short term.
It leaves them exposed. I don't think anyone's thinking at Hawthorn that they're going to finish in the 8. Yeah. They're going to finish down the bottom again, but they'll take some medicine next year, I think. They'll be competitive because of these good young kids that they've got. They'll be competitive, but they'll finish down at the bottom and they'll get 2 or 3 kids this year and they'll probably get 4 or 5 more next year, and that's how you do it. And then once you bring these kids in and they get 50 games in them or building towards 50, then you go to the free agents and then you start trading to get players in. They'll get you in the 8 and get you in the top 4.
Did you speak to the Pies, your former colleagues at the Pies, about their pickup?
No, well, I left a message, but I didn't get a reply, which didn't surprise me. But, look, I just wanted to know a bit more about Ed Allen because my information...
He's the buzzword, isn't he?
My information was that West Coast were going to take him with their pick. They took Elijah Hewitt, what was that, 12, 13, 14. So they went Elijah Hewitt. And I think Derek Hines killed it again here. I think Ed Allen's fallen in his lap. Just looking at what he's done, and it's impressive, but the most impressive thing is a 194 midfielder who runs a 281. Yeah. I mean, that's Dangerfield stuff, okay? Yeah. But Dangerfield was 190. Yeah. This bloke's 4 centimetres tall. That's Dangerfield territory. He was 180-odd at the time. Look, and, he had averaged 25 possessions in only 5 games. He played 1 game and they put him in the state side. So he had some injury problems. I think maybe West Coast might regret this one in 2 or 3 years' time.
Well, it won't be just West Coast.
They had first...
yeah, they did, yeah.
Yeah, but he was a local West Coast.
Yes, he was.
The good thing
23, they were probably hoping he'd fall through
But the good thing for Ed, his brother is here producing radio shows for SEN. That's right. So the brothers are going to hook up. Bad news for Benny Allen and his family. They've lost both sons to Melbourne. So, but look, he's... it looks impressive on paper. I haven't seen him play, Gerard, but I think they've had one fall in their lap and they've gone happy, happy days.
They looked happy.
So you mentioned the athleticism of him. What role does the combine results play as well? I know it's like
Yeah.
the recipe. Like you need everything. If you're making scones, you need the right amount of flour
Yeah.
and the right amount of milk. You stuff it up, then it can all go wrong. But you've got the interview, you've got the footage, you've seen them play live, you've got the combine results. How big a factor are they?
It's a factor that elevates some particular players. You don't put too much emphasis on it. I think if I can remember correctly, we used to put about 25% on athletic ability.
Too much?
Yeah, it might have been too much. It might have been 20, but it's important depending on what position that they play. So if you're a key forward or key back, you want them with some toe because they're going to play on blokes who've got some toe.
Yeah.
So you need them to run sub 3. In fact, we wanted everyone to run a sub 3 that you like to that you're going to pick, unless he was super smart, like a Adrian Fletcher or someone like that who could just find the ball, or a Tommy Mitchell and Matt Crouch and those blokes who just find the ball easy without that. But it is important, like Natanui, it was beneficial for him. His vertical jump just destroyed him at centre bounces for years, but he smashed the record back then. And that pace, when I took Dangerfield, Kane, they were desperate, Crows, for someone who had breakaway speed out of the midfield, and he was the captain obvious at the time.